Today, we're going to talk about story structure and how to build a book. And it's a little different spin on the typical three-act structure. So stick around and you can find out who I'm stealing these ideas from and how you can incorporate them into your work. Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Or welcome to the channel if it's your first time here. It's great to meet you. I'm John Hartness. I'm the founder and publisher of Falstaff Books. I'm a freelance editor as well as the author of over 40 novels, including multiple ongoing series like Quincy Harker Demon Hunter, The Black Knight Chronicles, Bubba the Monster Hunter, and many others. And today, I want to talk to you about a variation on the three-act plot structure that I kind of like. I'm going to do a couple of these videos because there's two major variations on the three-act structure that a lot of people are using currently. And today we're going to go over Dan Wells's 7-point story structure. Dan Wells is a podcaster and author. He wrote a really fantastic book called I Am Not a Serial Killer, which I think really gets deep into the head of a protagonist who's working on not being a monster while monstrous things are happening all around him. It's really great. You should check it out. He has also been at different points a co-host of the Writing Excuses podcast. I'm not sure if he's still on that show or not at the time of recording. It's been a while since I've listened to it. But there's a wealth of information there from some other fantastic writers. So you should check it out and check Dan's books out. He's great. This is the story structure that he tends to use when writing novels, and it feels a little bit like a deeper dive into your typical three-act structure. Your typical three-act structure being beginning, middle, end. You intro everything in Act 1, which takes 20 to 30% of your book. Then you've got the meat of the story in Act 2 with a couple of different twists and turns, and that usually takes 50 to 60% of your story. And then you move into your conclusion and your denouement in Act 3, and that usually takes 20 to 25% of your book. But Dan breaks it down into 7 story points that he says laying them out like this really helps him focus and make sure that he's not missing key moments in the book. And as you take a look at this structure, you'll realize that a lot of Western storytelling just kind of naturally fits into this structure, whether it was written along this formula or not. And you'll see this with a lot of hero's journey analyses of works and a lot of other ways that people break down popular fiction or movies, because a lot of times when we are writing books, they just kind of flow out of us in a way that the work that we've consumed in our lives was structured. You naturally write like what you've read. So if you have not read a ton of Western-centric fiction, this may not make any sense to you at all. And if you have only read Western-centric fiction, you may be forgiven for thinking this is the only way to tell a story. It's not. It's how I tend to tell stories because, spoiler alert, I'm a Western person. I grew up in North Carolina, which I know is on the East Coast, but it's still Western. It's still Western Civ was what I was taught in school. So I follow a lot of this structure unconsciously. But let's break down the pieces and the points of Dan's structure and see what we think about them. But let me get my old man glasses on so that I can really dive in. And let's stay hydrated. So In a 3-act book, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, I'm going to assign pieces of these story points into the different acts. So Act 1 starts off with what Dan calls the hook. I also call the beginning of the book a hook, but we're using the term differently. He's talking about your intro, your what some people call your beginning image. It's where you meet the protagonist. It's where you kind of see what the world is, whether we're in our world or an invented world or a variant of our world. If we're in a closed world magic system or an open world magic system. This all happens in the beginning. Nothing really happens yet. This is just where you're kind of, okay, something's happening. This is where you see what normal looks like for these characters. And then, with your second story point, stuff gets real. Stuff starts to happen. Strangely enough, uniquely enough, this is called plot point 1. Yeah, look, we're not going to be using tremendously original terms here. Let's save the originality for what happens on the page. But when we're talking about what happens creating stuff onto the page, let's just keep it simple. So plot point 1. A lot of people also refer to this as your inciting incident. Some people talk about this as what shifts you into Act 1. This is the moment. This is stormtroopers burning down Aunt Beru's house. This is taking the ring. This is the dwarves showing up for the party. This is the thing. This is a decision. This is a discovery. This is something that happens. It drags the character out of the life they knew and shoves them into something completely different. That's your first big moment in the story. Sometimes these things happen very close together. It's in Act 1, so even if they're a little bit separated, they're still fairly tight on top of each other. Sometimes you can invert them if you are using the old staring down at a dead body is not a bad place to start plan. But generally, you establish your scene and then you have your inciting incident. Then you go into Act 2. Everything from here is going to be in Act 2. Next up, Dan calls this pinch point 1. Again, not looking for originality in this bit. The originality is what you're putting on the page. I tend to call this raising the stakes. Some people also call it a turning point. This is when stuff's really starting to get real. Maybe it's your first glimpse of the bad guy. Maybe if it's a thriller, a lot of times this will be that first scene from the villain's point of view or the serial killer's point of view, if you didn't have that in a hook. But your pinch point 1, your raise the stakes moment, this is when you realize that this is going to be serious. We're on a ride now. It's also usually when someone puts a clock on your protagonists, someone puts a clock on their actions. And by putting a clock on it, I don't always mean a countdown timer on a bomb, but that's not a bad one. But it does mean that this guy has murdered someone once every 4 days and they just dropped another body. We have 72 hours before he's probably going to be picking his next victim. You're on a clock. The stakes are higher. Someone's dead, someone else is going to be dead. Or this is when your detective discovers a note planning an attack. And you don't know where it's going to happen. You don't know who's going to do it, but you know it's going to happen on Friday and it's Tuesday. These are examples of what you do in that first pinch point. You raise the stakes, you level up the intensity. This really is what's shoveling you into Act 2. And it should land somewhere along the 1/3, the 30 to 40% mark of the book, because your next point is the midpoint. I know, again, creatively named. This is the point at which your character takes ownership of the book. Not from you. Don't give me that BS about my character doesn't want to do. No. As a narrative device, something happens with your character, with your protagonist, that they lay claim to the events of the story. You are setting everything up here. You're making it very clear who the protagonist is, and this is your big turning point. When they realize exactly who they're up against, or they understand how great the stakes are. This is a major shift this is when you're shifting into third gear. Many of you have no idea what I'm doing with my hand when I'm doing this. Frankly, I've never driven a stick. I barely know what I'm doing when I'm saying shifting into third gear. But this is when you're ramping things up again. You've had your hook, you've had your inciting incident, you've had your pinch point, now you're at your midpoint, and now your next step, your step 5, is your pinch point 2. This is when things go badly wrong. This is when the wheels, they don't fall off completely, but the lug nuts are loose and everything's very wobbly. Your pinch point 2 is absolutely the great obstacle of the book. This should happen at about the 2/3 point, because this is going to lead you down, down, down before you pick it back up moving into Act 3. This is when, oh my God, the detective's partner has been shot. Oh, the bad guy knows where the hero lives. Oh crap, the Green Goblin has figured out who Peter Parker is and now he's going after Aunt May. Or he figured out who Peter Parker is and told the whole world, and now everything's terrible. And now we've got another stupid multiverse story. Anyway, also stop running backwards, Barry Allen. It never ends well. But pinch point 2 is right about the 2/3 mark structurally, and it drives you down into the lowest point. This is when it's starting to look bleak, when you're worried about your protagonist, when you don't know if they're going to make it or not. And that leads you to plot point 2. This is your breakthrough. This is your, we got this. This is your Avengers Assemble. This is your Ride of the Rohirrim. This is your cavalry's here. Or this is your protagonist just deciding to tighten up the straps on their shield on their broken arm and get back in there. Your plot point 2 is not the climax of the book, but this is when everything dials in and you know where you're going toward the climax. Let's say you're watching a police procedural TV show, which I watch an obscene amount of police procedurals. We can talk SVU for days, kids. And yeah, Munch and Ice-T were the best. Richard Belzer and Ice-T were the best detective pairing in TV history. In an episode of SVU, your hook is the part before the credits. Always. Your hook is the bit where you're going to get usually you're going to get one scene with the focal member of the squad doing a real life thing that will somehow tie to the rest of the episode, and then you'll get the crime. And then you roll credits. The crime is your plot point one. So your hook is everything leading up to the crime, the execution of the crime, the moment right before the dun 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 dun. That was a horrible imitation of the SVU theme song, and I'm sorry, Dick Wolf. But that's your plot point one, is right before the credits start on the episode of SVU. Your pinch point one is right about the 14 to 17 minute mark, and it's where you first meet the bad guy, but you don't think they're the bad guy. It's when you see that guy that you recognize from that thing, but you don't really remember their name, or it's Martin Short, who's one of the best villains in the history of SVU. But that's your pinch point of the episode, is when they follow the wrong suspect. Your midpoint is when they realize that that's not the villain, and they have to kick them loose. Then your pinch point two is, well, now what? The chief is breathing down our necks. We had to let our suspect go. We have nothing. We have nobody. What are we going to do? Ice-T makes some smart comment about some deep thing. Benson says something heartfelt, and whoever the new detective is does something probably stupid that turns out to be brilliant. Then your plot point two in an SVU episode is the arrest. Because the arrest in an SVU episode sends you into Act 3, which is the courtroom stuff. And the courtroom stuff, when you arrest the person that you know is going to turn out to be the bad guy, the villain, then that leads you into Act 3. And Act 3 is where your resolution happens. Your resolution is made up of driving to the climactic scene, which is frequently a courtroom scene in an SVU episode, but also can be your final battle. All of this in Endgame, you drive into Act 3. You really kick into Act 3 when you hear Sam Wilson say, "On your left." That's the beginning of the resolution of Endgame. When you hear "on your left," you're like, wait, what? Also, by the way, let's talk about spending most of a decade to pay off the "on your left" line. That's really good structure. And if you are writing an ongoing series and you drop in these little tiny things like that, your long-term readers will love you forever. Because long-term readers love nothing more than a little Easter egg. When I was DMing the Authors and Dragons podcast, one of the Easter eggs I built into the campaign was we were looking for a treasure. I think it was called the Gem of Fumark. And it was called the Gem of Fumark because we had a longtime fan who was part of the Authors and Dragons community that we referred to as FU Mark. Hi, Mark, if you're watching. So throwing that in to the campaign I was running on that podcast was not just a thanks to Mark for being a loyal fan who had become a good friend of a lot of us on the podcast, but it was also a little tossing a bone to everyone who had been with the show for years. So anytime you get a chance to do that, take it, because it will pay off your longtime fans. And there is not a dang thing wrong with a little bit of fan service in your books, because your fans are the reason you're allowed to keep doing this stuff. Without fans, without readers, without viewers like yourself, by the way, this would be a great moment for you to pause, then click the subscribe button, give us a like, and leave me a comment telling me if you are incorrect in your opinion that someone other than Ice-T and Richard Belzer were the greatest duo in the history of Law & Order SVU, or if you are also incorrect and think there's a better soda on the planet than Cheerwine. Do that, then come back and let's talk about that 7th piece of Dan Wells' 7-point story structure, which is your resolution, not your denouement. That's not actually a specific bit in this. That is all part of the resolution. But the resolution is your final battle, or maybe it's your final battle. In Endgame, your final battle isn't the final battle, because your final battle breaks. You've got the bit leading up to the on your left moment, then you've got everything after the on your left moment. And that is the transition in that film into your resolution story point. So the resolution includes the final battle, the triumph or loss, depending on how you're writing your book, and then the wrap up. And your wrap up is your denouement. So your 7 points are hook, plot point 1, pinch point 1, midpoint. Pinch point 2, plot point 2, resolution. And if you were to graph these out, it would look like your hook is starting down here. Then your plot point 1 is ramping up. Then your pinch point 1 is ramping up. Your midpoint is ramping up even more. Your pinch point 2 brings it down, because you can't just build. You have to bring it down at points. Your pinch point 2 brings it down. Then your plot point 2 picks it back up, and your plot point 2, that story point, should peak at about the same point as your midpoint peaked, and then you go higher, driving the action to your resolution. So hook, plot point 1, pinch point 1, midpoint, pinch point 2, plot point 2, resolution. Those are your 7 major story points according to Dan Wells. And for me, I tend to use the hook and plot point 1 in Act 1. And plot point 1 is kind of my transition leading into Act 2. Then for me, pinch point 1, the midpoint, and pinch point 2 are generally in Act 2 and take up the meat of the book, with plot point 2 being your transition moment from Act 2 into Act 3. And then obviously your resolution is in Act 3. So for me, your 2 plot points are kind of your bridge moments between acts. They're what shifts you from the world we knew into the world of the book. And then they shift you from the stakes are high and we're screwed into the stakes are high and we got this in Act 3. So that's kind of a quick rundown on Dan Wells' 7-point story structure. And if you've got questions about this, leave it in the comments. I will be doing another video coming up soon on Blake Snyder's 15 different beat points in the Save the Cat structure. And then we can look at which of these works better. The answer is neither. It depends on how you write, or how they kind of relate to each other. So there's a couple more videos on story structure coming. And if you want to make sure you don't miss them, you should ring that little bell down at the bottom to get notified. And if you want to see your name on all of these different videos, just like all of these people, and get our videos a couple days early, you can become a member of the channel. And if you want to learn more of this type of instruction, you can join us at the Saga Genre Fiction Writers Conference in March of 2026 in Charlotte. There's information down in the description, and we've got best-selling and award-winning authors coming to tell you how to write better books and make more money. Till next time, I'm going to go enjoy my cheer wine. Y'all have a good one.